A for ending it the exact night I caught him in my kitchen with my spare keys and a smile that didn't touch his eyes. He sabotaged the future I'd been building brick by brick. I had already changed the passwords, opened a new account, and set a PIN he didn't know. He never knew that part. My mouth said nothing. My hands shook once and went still. I measured the silence like a heartbeat and let it tell me what to do. It happened in the laundry room, of all places. Light buzzing. Tile cold under bare feet. A silver USB drive glinting where detergent should be. He thought I had gone to bed. He thought I snored through everything. I watched from the doorway, my tongue heavy with the taste of metal, that tingling that creeps up when your body understands before your mind does. He lifted my hoodie. He opened the pocket. He slid his phone in as if tucking a child back to sleep. I heard the soft click of a recording app stopping. I heard my own breath misbehave. He turned and saw nothing. Because I didn't move. Because for the first time in months, I let him talk to the ghost version of me he prefers. My life. My body. My rule. That's the sentence I pressed to the roof of my mouth to keep from screaming. You'd think this was the first offense. It wasn't even the first this week. It was just the first one that finally refused to be explained away by hunger or stress or the economy or the way he said love like a password he'd earned. 6 months earlier, I spoke with a lawyer. Free consult. Tuesday. Rain peeling off the glass like cellophane. I asked about financial separation inside a relationship. I asked about what counts as coercion when all the bruises live in bank statements and browser histories. Because I'd found a credit check with my name on it and his address. Because he had opinions about my body and my schedule and my ambition, and they always bloomed into alarms. Because a friend whispered, "Save receipts," and the lawyer said, "If you feel crazy, you're likely being managed." At the beginning, he braided my days with little ribbons. Honey on toast. Notes that said breathe. He learned my coffee order by day 4 and my middle name by day 6. He recorded me laughing once, said my laugh was proof that ordinary people could make weather. He put that clip as my ringtone. Sweet, right? That's the problem. Sweet is the hallway. Control is the locked door at the end. Then the trigger. My promotion. I got the email at 9:17 a.m. I stepped out, called him breathless. He paused too long and asked how late the hours would keep me. We celebrated with pasta and that precise, expensive wine he uses like a signature. Later his joke sharpened. So you're the boss now? Guess you don't need my help with budgeting. He accidentally missent a meme about girl bosses turning into their own worst bosses. He smiled when he said he was kidding. The smile didn't reach his eyes. There's a pattern there. Pressure came in with links. Articles about burnout. A friend of a friend who lost hair and gained weight after a raise. I just don't want you to lose yourself, he said. It sounded like concern until I noticed the bedtime alarms on my phone that I didn't set. Until I noticed focus modes I'd never known were a thing toggled on, shutting down my notifications after 8 p.m. That tiny thumbprint of his in every setting, invisible if you weren't looking under the paint. So I looked. I checked the obvious 3 places first, because that's where the truths hide when they think you're too in love to open drawers. 1. The glove compartment of his car. 2. The old shoebox in the hall closet under winter scarves. 3. The Notes app he pretends he only uses for grocery lists. In the car, I found an envelope with my full name spelled correctly and his handwriting on the sticky note. For later. In the shoebox there were copies of my pay stubs, neatly printed with circles around the line where the bonus hit. In the Notes app, there was a checklist titled, Stability Plan. Under it, bullet points that looked like errands and felt like leashes. Joint account, close access, her phone, limit apps, birth control, remind, calendar, sync, apartment lease, renew in my name only. My name in his mouth like property. I photographed everything. My hands were steady this time. The camera shutter sounded like proof. I kept the flash off. I felt that metallic taste again. I saved the photos to a folder with a bland name. I printed the lot at the pharmacy like I was developing vacation pictures. The clerk told me, these came out really clear. I said thank you and meant it like prayer. When I showed my best friend, the one with the blunt bangs and the spine made of piano wire, she didn't flinch. She said, that's coercive control. That's a pattern, not a phase. That's a crime where the punchlines are budgets. She named it. And when you name a demon it loses a tooth. I called his ex politely. Said I needed to ask something and she could hang up if it hurt. She exhaled like a drain unclogging. He'll make you feel rescued, she said. Then he'll make you pay rent for the rescue. Did he do the thing with the phone? And the taxes? I asked what thing. She laughed. No mirth. He tries to file early. He likes to help with paperwork. He likes to become the address where everything arrives. And in the background, I could hear a dog barking and someone knocking at a door she didn't open. She told me about a debt that appeared with her name and vanished when he left. She told me about a therapist who called it compulsive guardianship, which sounds like a wedding vow molded into a bear trap. By then the subplots were loud. A credit card application I didn't submit. A weird call from my bank asking if I'd moved. A landlord email addressed to him about my lease renewal. The clerk at the pharmacy saying he'd picked up my prescription, which I hadn't asked him to do. He thought caretaker sounded like lover. He thought shepherd sounded like home. It sounded like weather to me, pressure dropping, rain loading, sirens that only dogs and women hear. I went to the police. Not because I thought they'd fix my life in an hour, but because I needed a report number. Paper with ink beats charm with flowers. I filed about the credit check. I filed about the unauthorized mail forwarding I suspected. I asked a bored man behind glass how to document breath. He said, "Evidence is evidence," and slid me a brochure. It was lime green. It said safety plan. I went to the bank. I froze the credit pull. I moved money. I set alerts that beeped for any charge above $7. I met a woman named T, who has shoulders like cliffs and a voice like a night bus driver. She told me she sees my story every week and every time it is slightly different and exactly the same. She printed me another list and highlighted in yellow the steps that mattered most. Lock the file with a pin, she said. Don't tell him. Don't hint. When he acts confused, let him drown in it. I changed the locks. The landlord tried to say we needed both signatures. I said the word security in a tone that says I will find a lawyer who enjoys mornings. The locksmith arrived within an hour. He smelled like coffee and cold metal. He changed the deadbolt, then paused at the chain I'd hung months earlier. This one, he said, does nothing. It just makes noise. I said, good, then it can sing. When I finally called him, I didn't open with a thesis. No speeches. A script of bullets because bullets don't tremble. I said, I'm not asking. He tried to interrupt and I said, no, my second line, I opened a separate account. My third, I filed reports. My fourth, the case number is on a piece of paper you'll never touch. He said, you're overreacting. I said, I did all of this before you found my laundry room. He said, that was a mistake. I let the silence breathe. Then we agree, I said. Mistakes require consequences. He started to raise his voice. I lowered mine. Talk to my lawyer, I said and hung up. I'd A for cutting a man off at the knees before he could legally adopt my life. He didn't go cinematic. Real life almost never does. He sent flowers. He sent a playlist that began with an old song we loved and ended with a newer song with a title like Apology. He texted, I was scared. I thought I was helping. He texted, you know how you get during work season. He texted, when you decided on that dose last month, I got worried. I stared at the word dose until it turned into noise. He had picked up my prescription twice. He had opinions about the way I rest. He had a list titled Stability Plan. His plan. Not mine. My body. My rule. I'm writing this from a sublet that smells like lemon and dust and a life that hasn't decided its habits yet. There's a blue rug with a stain shaped like a comma. Maybe that's a sign. I adopted a cat with one ear. He falls asleep on top of my shoes like they're a raft. Every morning I walk 3 blocks to a coffee shop where no one knows my order yet, and my phone only shows the names I choose. My thumbs relearned the shape of yes. But the night in the laundry room isn't done with me. Not yet. Because after the USB and the hoodie and the click I could hear over my pulse, I noticed something else. A key. Not one of mine. A landlord's master, stamped with numbers I recognized from the maintenance man's ring. It flashed when he bent. He pocketed it like lint. That was the part that clipped the air. That was the part that made the floor tilt. Master keys make all locks into ideas. I stood there with my teeth buzzing and my breath braided with panic and thought, how many doors have you practiced on? How many doors did you teach to open politely? I didn't call him out that second. I watched him climb the stairs. I watched him check his phone. He typed and the glow made him look holy. I wrote down the numbers stamped on the key with a dry erase marker on the washer lid. Then I took a picture of that. Evidence is evidence. The next morning, I walked to the management office before it opened, counted cracks in the sidewalk like rosary beads, and waited. The receptionist had nails like moons. I told her someone was carrying a master key who shouldn't be. She blinked hard. She checked the list. She brought out the building manager, who swallowed his surprise wrong. A long cough. "We've had an issue," he said. "A set went missing in July." He asked how I knew. I said the word boyfriend the way some people say fire. His mouth turned into a tight little purse. "We'll handle it," he said. I said, "I'm handling it," and slid a printed photo of the key across the counter. He looked small next to the picture. We both did. The manager agreed to rekey the entire building. He didn't bill me. He didn't apologize either. He called it an abundance of caution, like we were ordering extra napkins. I still had to see him one more time, because some things you can shut off in settings and some things climb in through the vents. He came by before dusk, face soft in the light that flatters liars. I had already moved the small things. The big things can be replaced or left to rot. He looked around like a tourist. He reached for my wrist, an old habit, and stopped because my face told him we don't do that anymore. He said, "This isn't you." I said, "You never met me. You met the version you had time to micromanage." He opened his mouth and found no words inside. I handed him an envelope. Inside, a copy of the police report numbers, the bank's fraud alerts, the building notice about new locks, and a letter from my lawyer with her name in a font that says, "Please try me." He laughed. It broke in the middle and fell into our shoes. He asked me if I'd think about it. I said, I already did. He asked me if I'd meet him for coffee. I said, "You don't get to know where I drink anymore." He said, "So you're just going to throw this away?" I said, "I'm throwing away the box you kept trying to fold me into." He said, "You'll regret this." I said, "I regret giving you my phone for that first update." Then he said the quiet part. The part he never expected to say out loud because he usually says it into devices and bank forms. He said, "You don't understand how hard it is to keep a life aligned." The room went so silent the clock sounded like a hammer. I said, "Aligned with what?" He didn't answer. He couldn't. Because the answer is small and cruel. Because the answer is, aligned with him. Here's where I tell you about the part one haven't told anyone. Not my friend with the piano wire spine. Not the ex who warned me about taxes. Not the bank woman with shoulder cliffs. Not even the therapist I made an appointment with because sometimes my heart wakes me up to count the locks again. I haven't told anyone this because it sounds like I'm bragging about instinct, and I'm not. It isn't instinct. It's practice. It is a habit I stitched into myself the way you stitch a hem when the dress keeps catching on door handles. 6 months earlier, when I met the lawyer in the rain, I didn't just ask about money. I asked about templates. I asked about scripts. I asked about what goes in a report and what stays in a journal. I asked about what to do if he got loud and I got small. I asked about what to say if he said the words that mean stay. The lawyer gave me a list and I put it in my phone under the name dentist. The first line said, "Do not debate." The second, "Say as little as necessary." The third, "Every promise must live on paper." The fourth, "If he threatens, stop recording the relationship and start recording the threat." So when he said, "You'll regret this," I reached for the phone I had already set to record. I don't need a movie. I need a file. I don't want revenge. I want a life where I don't count how many times a day I say sorry for being awake. He left insulted. People who build quiet cages hate the scrape of their own key on the bars. He did that hands out, wounded look like a saint who misplaced his halo. Then he sent one last text from the street, "I never touched your accounts." My phone chirped. At that exact moment, an automated bank alert reported an attempt to add a new device to my login from a nearby IP. I stared at both forms of the same sentence. I screenshotted them in one frame like a diptych. I know Reddit loves a twist. I wish my twist was glamorous. It isn't. It's made of spreadsheets and copy machines. It's built for me at a kitchen table with a pen that doesn't leak and a back that finally stopped curving. It's me whispering the line again, the one that tastes like salt and iron and the first bite of an apple one didn't share. My body, my life, my rule. The cat is asleep. The lemon smell is fading into just air. I'm writing this with the window open so I can hear regular noises. Dishes. A laugh. A bike chain slipping back into place. I have an appointment tomorrow with a financial counselor who costs less than a bad dinner. I have a lock that sounds like a small thunder when it shuts. I have a phrase that puts my spine in the right order. And yet, when I open the mailbox in the lobby of the old place one last time, the metal door sticking the way it always did, there was a single white envelope addressed in my handwriting. Inside, a photocopy of a tax form. Not the full thing. Just the top half. My name. His address. The date stamped faintly in the corner, months before we met. My stomach dropped through the floor. The cat made a sound like a question. I looked at the stamp again. I looked at the crease line where the page had been folded. I looked at the faint outline of another page that had been pressed against this one at some point, the ink ghost bleeding shapes I couldn't quite read. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm saying it asks a question with teeth. Because if my information was already living in his files in a month that belonged to a life before him, then either a clerical error learned how to time travel or he's been walking through people's mailboxes for longer than his stories admit. I closed the envelope slowly. My hands didn't shake. Not this time. I took a photo because evidence is evidence. I placed it back in the box and left it there for a second set of eyes, because sometimes the truth needs witnesses more than it needs heroes. I hit the street and tasted rain even though the sky was clear. I kept walking until the lemon sublette grew out of the sidewalk like a lighthouse and the cat meowed like an anchor. I locked the door and leaned my forehead against the wood. I counted to 10. I counted again. I told myself out loud the sentence that has kept me from apologizing to a storm for being wet. I said, I am the only person who gets to decide the weight of my own keys. And then my phone lit up with a number I didn't recognize, and a voice I hadn't heard in a year said my name like a warning. The voice belonged to someone who left town with half a suitcase and a scar that matched mine. She said, he's not done. And neither is the bank, and the call clicked like a lock and I didn't recognize the number, but I knew the fear stitched to it. The voice said my name like she was testing a bruise. Then, he's not done and neither is the bank. The line fuzzed once, like a secret changing rooms, and she said she couldn't talk long. A small town. A mutual friend. A story I didn't ask for that matched mine in the dark. She said, check your mail forwarding. Check your tax transcript pulls. Check the devices tied to your login. He tries to wear people's addresses like he's trying on coats. She hung up like stepping off a curb. The silence after was so clear I could hear the cat breathing and the refrigerator thinking about it. I stood with the phone lid in my hand until the screen dimmed and my reflection found itself. I wrote 3 lines on a yellow sticky and stuck it to the wall above the counter like I was pinning down a moth. USPS. IRS transcript. Device list. Simple nouns that taste like metal if you chew them slow. My body. My life. My rule. I started with the mail. I went online. There it was, simple as a shrug. A pending change of address submission. Not finalized. Flat. Address, his building. Effective date, last week. Whoever processed it loved the number 7, they typed it where it didn't belong. I canceled it. Confirmation number recorded. Screenshot saved. Evidence is evidence. Then the IRS. I requested a transcript I hadn't asked for. System said, recently accessed. Identity protection PIN enrollment, attempted. I kept my breath even and read the timestamp twice. Evidence is evidence. I called. 39 minutes of hold music that sounded like it wanted to be a lullaby and quit halfway. A woman with a voice like graphite finally answered. She asked me questions no one would know unless they had read the paperwork that lives under the bones of your life. I got one wrong because of a move 3 apartments ago. She said it happens. She put an identity theft flag on my file and said a phrase I hadn't rehearsed. You might see a false return in your name. Don't panic. Don't touch it. Let it fail. She gave me a case number that looked like a license plate. I wrote it down twice. Then the devices. I thought I knew every screen that carried my logins like a second purse. I didn't. There was a tablet listed that I had never owned and a laptop with a name like a dog. Maxwell. Last location. Near the coffee place he likes because the cappuccino foam looks like a topographical map. I revoked, and the little circles spun like dizzy planets and then went still. He texted 3 minutes later, did you change something? I'm locked out of the streaming account. I stared at the word streaming and felt the middle school part of me that still wants to apologize stand up and look for a way to look smaller. I didn't answer. My spine stayed in alphabet order. I'm not asking. I already did. I looped in the bank again. T. Answered on the second ring like she'd been waiting with her hand on the phone. She told me the call I got earlier wasn't a ghost. A device had tried to add itself with a name that looked like a sneeze. She said, "We blocked it. We escalated your case. And, this is important, don't read him anything from the letter we send you. He'll shop the terms." I didn't understand the last part. She explained. Script charmers collect language and try it on later. He'll parrot the phrases like a kid in a borrowed suit. She lowered her voice and said, "He's going to perform care. It'll be indistinguishable from control unless you hold it up to the light." I held everything up to the light. It burned my palms and cooled my head. The friend with the piano wire spine came over with coffee and a charger and a face that could break mirrors. We sat on the blue rug with the comma stain and made a list of my list. We did it like we were planning a party for a version of me that had RSVP'd with a yes. Where to search, 3 places, then 3 more. The old inbox I never checked because it was supposed to be for store coupons. The recycle bin on the cloud storage that keeps versions like a jealous god. The physical folder labeled apartment that I moved without opening because I thought it was just receipts from the first place with the mouse problem. In the inbox, a forwarded voicemail transcription from the building manager at my old address, 2 months ago, asking me to confirm I'd be renewing at the partner rate. Partner rate. Not a thing. In the cloud bin, a deleted PDF titled Form 8822. Change of address. The metadata said the document had been downloaded at 2:14 a.m. At 2:14 a.m., I was asleep with a cat on my chest and a window half open. The folder had been shared with an email that looked like his if you squinted, except the third letter was a number turned into a letter. I unshared. I reset. I took photos of the screen like a tourist who goes to bureaucracy for vacation. In the physical folder, something stranger. A photocopy of a spare key receipt from last spring. My name misspelled, but close enough to pass a lazy glance. Signature that looked like mine if you didn't know where I loop. A note in the margin I recognized as his handwriting. "She'll thank me later." I sat there and watched my face try to decide which emotion to unclench first. I photographed everything. My friend said, "We could make a gallery show, women with evidence." We smiled without showing teeth. I called my therapist for the first real session and told her a condensed version with all the poetry sucked out so the bones showed. She said, "This is a baseline, not a crisis. A crisis is when you can't act. You can act. You have been acting." She named the thing again because repetition makes a bridge. Coercive control. She added what the ex had called it, compulsive guardianship. She said guard and let the word hang like a bell. Then she said something I didn't expect. "Your nervous system is not wrong. It's just early." She gave me breathing exercises like pairing socks. She told me to move my body every morning before I touch a screen. She told me the symptom I was calling panic might partly be grief. Grief for the hours I gave to a man who kept trying to turn me into a calendar event. When he found out the building was rekeying everything, he performed outrage like opera. He sent me a video of himself gesturing in the lobby, voice echoing, calling the manager unprofessional and litigious, and I had to pause at that word because it sounded like he was tasting it for the first time. He said he'd call a lawyer. I texted one line, "Please direct any communication through mine." He replied with 6 paragraphs and a PS that said he'd always keep me safe. I told the part of me that wants to annotate with exclamation points to sit down and be quiet. The police followed up with a voicemail from a different voice with a different tone. He used the word pattern and the word documented and the phrase ongoing investigation that made me feel like I was on a TV show except for the smell of my neighbor frying onions that made it real again. He asked if I could come by to add the new evidence. I went. I brought printed photos and a list. He was nicer than the first man behind glass. He said, "This is the part movies get wrong. Nothing explodes. Things click." He meant locks. He meant cases. He meant the inside of a person when certainty finally earns a chair. When I ask AI to hear, I can hear the chorus warming up with the usual harmonies. "Why didn't you leave sooner? Why didn't you see it? Why are you calling a man abusive when he never hit you? Why are you making the bank do your boundaries? Why are you so sure you didn't invite the control by enjoying the care?" I have a file full of bank alerts and an envelope with a photocopy of last year's tax form with my name on his address and a sticky note from a stranger's warning call and a master key stamped with numbers that didn't belong in any of our hands. If care is a gift you can unwrap, control is a list you don't get to edit. I didn't invite the second thing by saying thank you for the first. He did the wellness check. Of course he did. That old dirty magic. He called the police and said he was concerned because I was uncharacteristically unresponsive and on new medication. 2 officers at my door at 9 p.m., polite, tired, not unkind. I showed them my reports. I showed them my cat. One of them crouched and let the cat sniff his knuckles. The other asked if I wanted to add this to my file. I said yes and tried to keep my hands from telling on me. When they left, the hallway smelled like uniforms and a story I didn't pick. I texted him 2 sentences, "Do not weaponize concern. There is a record." He wrote back, "You're paranoid." I wrote back nothing. Silence is not consent. Silence is my choice pocketing my breath. The subplots got busy. A small debt I'd never seen before, a store card for a place I hadn't shopped in since college, popped up like a weed between paving stones. It had been opened. It had been closed. It had left a bruise on my credit score that J. at the credit bureau said would fade when the investigation did its slow work. J. told me to set a passphrase that isn't a word anyone would guess. I set one that isn't a word at all, but a sound I only make when I lift something heavy. Meanwhile, he tried the softer attacks that don't look like attacks. Songs. Photos. A voice memo of a storm we watched together from the back steps last spring, when the sky wrinkled and the lightning stitched itself toward us like it had news. He said, "You're throwing away something rare." I said under my breath, "So are you, someone who listens when I say the word no?" He said, "I shouldn't have taken the key." I said to the empty room, "You shouldn't have wanted it." My lawyer sent a letter that didn't breathe hard, just lined up facts like shoes by the door. It said cease further access, cease impersonation, cease misrepresentation, cease interference. It included the phrase coercive control, and cited a statute I Googled later and felt the strange warmth of recognition. While that spun through the mail, I started the small daily rituals that make a person sticky enough to stay with herself. Morning walk. Water before coffee. Phone in the drawer for the first hour. Cat fed before screens fed me. Hands on the lemon-scented counter like I was learning the surface area of my own life. He pivoted. They always do. When the front door holds, they try the side gate. He reached out to my mother. She called me with her empathy set to high and said, "He is worried." He said, "You're not yourself." I said, "This is the most myself I've been since I forgot where I end." She asked if I was sure. I said, "I have a folder that could teach a class." I emailed her the timeline. She didn't reply right away. The next day she texted a picture of a lock she'd had installed on her mailbox. She said, "I see it." The day after, she apologized for the questions. She used the word proud and it felt like opening a window. One more dig because the warning voice had told me to look where people keep their trophies. He'd always been casually arrogant about his backups. He liked to say he could resurrect any file from 3 different clouds. Men like that forget the trash has a memory too. In a shared folder from a long-ago project, I found screenshots of my settings from months before we even said I love you. It was the same familiar curve of my phone battery icon, the same wallpaper I'd had when I still believed plants were a personality trait. Timestamped. Filed under self-improvement, which felt like a dare. I downloaded. I blacked out everything but the proof. I added them to the file and willed myself not to throw up. Then came the thing that almost broke me, not because it was the worst, but because it was so believable if you wanted it to be. He sent an essay. He's not a writer, not really. But he arranged the words like an apology learned phonetically. He said he grew up with chaos and learned to fix things before they fell. He said he read a book about attachment and it gave him a religion he didn't know how to leave. He said he never meant to treat me like a project, but I am the only thing that ever made him want to slow down. He said he didn't steal the key, he found it. He said he didn't file forms, he filled them out and chickened out. He said he didn't try to log into my accounts. He accepted a prompt he thought was his. He said he loves me. He said he loves me. He said he loves me. The cat stretched and knocked the printed letter off the table and I watched it slide to the floor like a stage prop. I could forgive a past. I cannot forgive a plan. The plan was written. The bullets were real. The receipts had circles around the lines where my money lived. The master key had numbers that matched a loss report. The IRS had a case number. The bank had AT, who could testify in a whisper. The police had a folder with my name spelled right. I had a spine that didn't bend when I looked down. But AIA for setting everything to concrete before I ever looked him in the eye and said, "No? That's the charge he wants to float." That I didn't give him a chance to show me worse before I left. I keep thinking of a sentence the lawyer said at the end of the rainy consult. You don't owe anyone the courtesy of watching them become who they've told you they are. I wrote that down in the Notes app as weather advisory. The practical outcomes are less glamorous than anyone's memory wants. The bank reversed the attempt and sent a certified letter with blocks of text that read like fences. The credit bureau placed the freeze and flagged the fraudulent file. The building rekeyed and put a notice in the elevator calling it a security refresh, so no one had to panic in public. The police added lines to a report and told me different counties speak to each other slower than we'd like. My lawyer filed a petition for a protective order that doesn't wear a cape, just a number a dispatcher can see when they pull up our names. We're not in the climax. We're in the paperwork. Movies lie. Processes hum. I threw away the chain that just makes noise. I kept the deadbolt that sings. I taped a photo of the master key numbers to the inside of my cabinet door where only I can see, not because I need to, but because the act of not hiding from it is a form of healing. I bought a new pen that doesn't smear. I refilled a prescription myself and told the pharmacist my name without making it a question. I took the long way home because the short one remembers. The next time he called, I let it go to voicemail. He sounded tired. He sounded like he wanted to be seen doing tired. He said he'd been talking to someone about reparative cycles, and he was open to feedback. He said he'd stop checking on me if I just told him once that I was okay. I pressed the phone to my chest and felt my heartbeat refuse to perform. I'm okay. I don't need to tell you for it to count. I wish the story ended there. Neat. Tucked. The cat snoring into a new pillow on a bed that only ever knows my weight and my friend's laughter. But the caller ID that started this section wasn't the only number that learned my name. 2 days later, a different unknown voice left a message that sounded like a form letter wearing a human mask. A man in a suit, probably, with a desk plant and a calendar that says words like "Q2. He said he represented a creditor. He said my application had been denied. He said if I wanted to appeal I could call and discuss or provide supplemental documentation. He read a reference number. It didn't match any of mine. He read an address. It wasn't the Lemon sublet. It was a P.O. box in a town I could drive to in 1 hour and 10 minutes if the traffic cooperated and my stomach didn't turn inside out. I called T. She said, "We caught one branch of the river. Another fork is trying to find you." She asked if I'd ever lived in that town. I said no. She said, "Then he's tributary testing your perimeter." I laughed because I had to at tributary testing, and then I stopped laughing because she was right. She told me to file an FTC identity theft report and freeze with the smaller bureaus people forget exist. I did it. I filled out forms until my hand made that little claw it makes when I forget I have bones. I uploaded PDFs. I named files like a librarian who moonlights as a bouncer. The therapist said, "When you feel the pull to narrate your compliance to him, narrate it to yourself instead. Out loud. Hear your own voice. It teaches your body you are the witness and the judge." So I did. I read my to-do list to the lemon-scented counter. I told the cat the case numbers. I said the phrase out loud again, "My body, my life, my rule." The words tasted less like iron now. More like salt on the rim of a glass I poured. He tried one last tactic before the next one. He asked a mutual friend to deliver a message. The friend texted and said he didn't like being in the middle. Then he relayed it anyway because some men think neutral is a virtue when it's just comfortable. The message: he wants to know if you'll meet in public daylight, your friend can come, no devices. I wrote back to the friend, "Tell him to write it all down and send it to my lawyer. Tell him I'm not a stage." The friend sent a thumbs up because men don't know what else to send. Then the knock. Not a fist. The polite rap of someone who considers himself professional. I looked through the peephole and saw a man with a shirt the color of printer paper and a folder. Process server. Not from him. From the credit company in the small town with the P.O. box. My heart did that rabbit thing. I opened the door because I'm not running. He confirmed my name 2 different ways. He handed me the folder. I closed the door. The cat pressed his whole body against my ankle like we were both learning to be a wall. I called my lawyer. She picked up on the second ring like she always does when the world tries to escalate. She said, "Deep breath. Half of this is junk and we'll prove it." The other half is a kind of junk that looks official until you hold it in the sun. She told me what to do and what not to do. She told me to email her scans and then go eat something with protein. I sent the scans. I sat on the floor and ate peanut butter off a spoon because childhood survival skills are underrated. Am I the asshole for torching a bridge that was actually a hallway leading to a room where only his preferences fit? If I am, then I'll be that. I'd rather be an asshole with a lock than a saint with a master key. The ending is not a bang. It is the long, slow click of a life seating itself in its hinges. Except the last page of the folder the server left isn't about me. It's a list of associated addresses. One of them belongs to the ex who warned me about taxes. Another belongs to a woman I only know by her first name and the way she once cried in a bathroom at a party he dragged us both to. Another, circled in pencil, is the address of the building manager who swallowed his surprise the day I showed him the master key photo. My stomach falls, then steadies. Patterns are comforting until they're terrifying. Annette is a pattern too. I text the ex, "Did you get anything weird in the mail?" She replies within a minute, "You too." 3 dots. Then, he's filing addresses like seeds. I ask her if she's safe. She says safer than before. I ask her if she wants to compare notes. She says tomorrow, same time, new coffee place. I say yes and picture the door I will sit facing, the exit I will map, the light I will claim for my side of the table. I already know what I'll bring. Copies, case numbers, a spine. And then my phone rings again, the same unknown number from the very first warning, and the voice says my name with no bruise this time, only urgency, and she says, "I found something in my attic from the year before you met him. It has your name on it and it's not a typo." And the call clicks like a lock sliding, and the room tilts very slightly, and the cat lifts his head like a metronome counting down to. I drove to the ex's house at noon, the sun bleaching everything honest, the kind of light that makes lies look overdressed. She lived in a split level with a maple out front that creaked like it had seniority. She opened the door with paint under her nails and said my name like we'd agreed on it years ago. We didn't hug. We walked to the kitchen where the light knows what to do, and she pointed to a banker's box on the table. On top, a padded envelope collapsed in on itself, postmarked 2 summers ago, addressed to my name at a place I'd never lived. Her handwriting on a sticky, attic behind the board games. I could smell dust and lemon cleaner. The cat hair on her sweatshirt glowed like static. I peeled the envelope open. Inside, a photocopy of a passport application with my photo. Not the photo I use for anything official. A clipped image like he'd lifted it from a social post and taught it to pass. Beneath, a form for a mailbox service, my name printed, his email scribbled where the service wanted mine. The date at the bottom bit hard. It was the month I quit a job and posted a photo of my last day cupcake with a caption about freedom. He must have read my goodbye like a permission slip. Evidence is evidence. I photographed everything. I wrote the dates in thick pen on the white of a paper plate because that was what the kitchen offered, and sometimes the domestic is the only thing with a backbone. Then she pulled out the thing that clicked the floor under my feet into place and also tilted the room. 2 truths, same weight. A list. Printed. Titled, Stabilizers. The bullets weren't chores. They were acquisitions. Insurance. Lease. Emergencies. A notation next to emergencies. Use concern works. A notation next to lease. Manager pliable. Another, underlined twice. Master keys circulate. I felt my face go calm the way the ocean lies to you right before it breaks. She sat down, palm flat. I told myself it was a phase. I told myself it was country boy caretaker. I told myself I looked tired and he liked fixing. She swallowed. I found this box last week when the roof guys were up there. I didn't even open it at first. I wanted to move on so hard I almost threw it out with Christmas lights that don't work. She looked at me and the kitchen light did that thing where it pins you to the board kindly. Then I saw your name on an old envelope. Not a coincidence. Not anymore. We made copies. We labeled them. We laughed once, not because anything was funny, but because we had to put a seam in the day where breath could enter. On my way out, she said, if he was a house inspection, he'd always pass because he fixes the cosmetic first. We stood on the porch and watched the maple shake like it had something to say. Then she added, you're not the asshole. You're the exit. I left with my box and drove to the police station because this is how boring stories become resilient. The officer who had said things clicked took the papers, nodded at the dates, and whistled low at the master key note. He stapled methodically and said, "There's a reason people get licensed to look at other people's structure." He didn't get licensed. He just practiced. I asked if there was any charge that held without bruises. He said statutes don't love feelings but they respect patterns. He said, "What you have is a pattern that applied for a job." He printed me a new case summary that read like a table of contents for a book I didn't want to write and gave me the next steps in a voice that didn't rise. Then I went to my lawyer. She read the stabilizer sheet and sat very still, the way you do when a predator walks through a frame. She said he was building a paper street. A place where documents cross each other in the dark and kiss. Her mouth went hard at partner rate. Her eyes did not blink when I said, "Passport application." She tapped a pencil on the margin where he'd written, "Use concern." She said, "Judges understand concern. They live on it. The trick is showing the performance." She sent certified letters that weren't threats, just fences written informal. She filed a petition for an order that doesn't stop bullets but stops excuses. She prepared a declaration for every subtle thing I could prove. It felt like apportioning rain. He got served 2 days later. The message came through the grapevine because men who like control always tell on themselves to somebody with a barstool. He was blindsided, which made me laugh out loud in my kitchen. Blindsided is what people call consequences when they've been facing the road the whole time and chose not to see the sign that said bridge out. The next week passed in paperwork and small rituals. I woke up without my ribcage buzzing. I walked the 3 blocks to the coffee shop and stood in line with people whose ordinary lives made music. I did not check my phone before I fed the cat. I filed an FTC identity theft affidavit, froze every bureau a human can name and 2 they can't without Googling. I built a binder like I was making a spine I could lend out. I put the master key numbers on an index card in the back sleeve because I don't hide from facts anymore. I slept. Some nights I woke up and counted locks with my fingers and then I breathed back down because counting can be a prayer if you refuse to let it become a fear. He pivoted to sorrow. Voicemails where he sounded like a man who had learned the shape of contrition from podcast. He said he was in a program. He said he had a sponsor. He said the word amend, singular, like it was a gift he could wrap once and watch me open again when I forgot I'd already opened it. I kept the recordings. I added the dates. I didn't reply. Silence is a sentence with subject and verb. Then the court date, which isn't a scene in a movie and doesn't try to be. Fluorescent light. A clerk who breathes through her mouth while she reads. People waiting with folders that look like ours. He didn't meet my eyes. He wore a blazer we both know he only puts on to speak to managers. He had a lawyer with a haircut that suggested certainty. Mine had a legal pad and a face that reads arguments before they introduce themselves. She spoke clean. She said control like it was a noun that pays rent. She said identity like it was a door. She said pattern and laid the papers down like stepping stones. His lawyer said I was vindictive. Said I was creative. Said I did not understand tech. Said I'd made a mountain out of safeguards. My lawyer handed the judge a printout of the stabilizers with the use concern underlined. The judge's eyes flicked. Didn't blink. I saw a small muscle move in his cheek. He asked 2 questions that had nothing to do with romance and everything to do with access. My lawyer answered with dates, logs, case numbers. The judge gave us a temporary order that limits his proximity to both my inbox and my living body. It isn't dramatic. It is a piece of paper with a line. Lines hold. The bank closed the loop on the P.O. box attempt. The credit company withdrew the nonsense case after my lawyer faxed them something that smelled like iron. The building manager sent an email to all tenants saying the locks were new and the master system was retired. He didn't say why. I didn't need him to. In the elevator, a woman I'd seen once with a laundry basket asked if I'd felt safer lately. I said yes. We both held the door for a man juggling a plant and a hope. My mother started sending me photos of her daily walks, her mailbox lock shining like a new tooth. She asked about the cat by name. She stopped saying worried and started saying aware. She said she was proud of the way I made a plan without asking a wolf for permission to leave the woods. I cried on the phone once and she said, "That's water leaving." We smiled in the silence like a ceremony. Weeks passed. The lemon smell in the sublet faded into the quiet ordinary. I set my phone to ring only for people who would sit on the floor with me while I sort papers. Everyone else goes to voicemail. The therapist and I did the thing where you rehearse encounters so the body stops acting like a deer when it's just a mailbox. We practiced a sentence I can put between me and anyone who tries to hire me back into my old job of being agreeable. That doesn't work for me. Period. Not a paragraph. Then the epilogue found me because it always does when you're not wearing your armor. Grocery store late. Tuesday where routine goes to exhale. The hiss of the produce spray. The floor polished to a judgment. I turned the corner into cereal and there he was, holding a box like the breakfast version of a white flag. For half a second the old habit rose, make it easy for him to pretend this is normal. It passed. He looked at me and tried on a face that said humbled. I measured my own pulse. Calm. I measured my breath. Even. I measured my feet. Firm. He opened his mouth. I shook my head once. I didn't speed up. I didn't slow down. I didn't perform relief or anger for him to feed on. I walked past him, past the good granola he always bought to look like a person with fewer appetites, past the peephole that used to be my phone, past the aisle where the paper towels live in columns like a courthouse. He stood there holding his box. I left with mine. On the way out, a clerk asked if I wanted a donation sticker on the wall. I wrote my cat's name. I stuck it next to a paper heart with the word community written in a messy hand that reminded me of the woman with the laundry basket. I pushed into the night and the air met me like a friend. I didn't check the parking lot twice. I checked once, like a person who expects safety and is ready to make it if it isn't handed to her. The outcomes weren't cinematic, but they were real. The protective order made a hum in the background that changed the music of my days. The identity theft case closed in slow, bureaucratic relief. The credit score unbruised itself like a thigh after a bump. The bank flagged my accounts in a way that was helpful and not paternal. The building manager installed cameras without announcing it with a memo covered in clip art. The ex sent me a photo of her mailbox key on a keychain shaped like a small moon. We met for coffee sometimes, two women who learned to live by the light of the flash on their phones. We didn't talk about him unless one of us needed to take a splinter out. Then we put the splinter on a napkin and looked at it until it became just a piece of wood. I kept the binder for a while, then scanned it all and put the paper in a box labeled taxes, because life refuses to let you be metaphorical for long. I adopted a second cat, a shy tuxedo who sleeps like a sentence that ends when it means to. I learned the names of my neighbors because anonymity is a luxury and community is a lock. The lemon sublet gave way to a place with morning light that knows my face. I put a plant by the window and kept it alive on purpose. I saw him one more time, not a run-in, just a silhouette across a street, and the thing that mattered is that I didn't narrate it to myself like a warning. I narrated it like weather, passing cloud. I didn't speed up. I didn't edit my posture for an audience that isn't invited. If I'm honest, I felt a small ache, not for him, but for the girl who thought sweetness was a floor and not a rug that someone could yank. I sent her a kind thought. I kept walking. If you're reading this and counting the steps, I get it. I counted them too. I still do sometimes. Here's what I know when I'm not pretending I don't. He was not a storm I survived. He was a system I opted out of before it could brand me with its calendar. AITA for leaving before he could qualify for a last chance? If I am, I accept the verdict with a key in my pocket and a life that opens when I'm the one who wants it to. The thing I keep repeating when my hands get itchy for the phone, when my mouth wants to text something neutral, when concern shows up in a costume at my door, is simple in shape and heavy in hand. My body. My life. My rule. And when the quiet tries to make me apologize for existing, I say it again out loud to the lemon counter and the plants and the two cats and the shadow of the woman who used to say sorry to the weather for being wet. I am the only person who gets to decide the weight of my own keys.